Well, numerous lawmakers have self-quarantined after it was revealed that an attendee at the CPAC conference had the coronavirus.
Many of the attendees that went are on edge and complaining that the event organizers won't release the person's identity. Is it in the best interest to release that kind of information? Joining us is the founding editor of the Washington Free Beacon, Matthew Continetti, and the Daily Caller's Vince Coglianese. Vince, you were at CPAC with me. Yeah.
Yes.
That's why you're over there and I'm over here.
Right.
This is
just in case.
That's just in case. We're taking appropriate precautions. Is it incumbent upon the folks at CPAC, the organizers, to release this person's name?
Well, obviously, these guys have a big question in front of them, which is, like, do they want to make this person a national panic celebrity, right? And I think a lot of conservatives who attended the conference do have justifiable concern about wanting to know, okay, who was this person? But it's been really easy to sort through the tea leaves. It's a person who was clearly in a backstage area. It's not somebody who was with the general attendees, not somebody on Radio Row. They were kept to kind of a sequestered area. So that means people like the lawmakers that we saw who were self-quarantining were exposed. And what I found out this morning from Matt Schlapp, who actually runs this whole event, he said, despite the fact that the high-profile people who were affected have released press releases declaring their self-quarantine, there's been a whole bunch of low-profile people they've also reached out to. You don't see those in the news, but there are people who are not. It's not just famous lawmakers who have been contacted.
Low-profile people.
Sure.
I'm not sure that they would agree with the low-profile.
Yeah, probably not. This is Washington.
Right, but it's interesting because what someone told me the other day is that because they don't know who it is, when they try to get treatment, they can't prove that they had been in direct contact with somebody, right? And that's inhibiting their ability to get medical services. So I guess that would be the flip side to this. Matthew, do you...
Right. Well, it's contact tracing, and that's why I agree with Vince. It might not be incumbent on CPAC to release the name publicly, but it is incumbent on them to trace who the individual. But
so, like, what if it wasn't public? What if you could call in and say, "Hey, I'm so and so. Here's where I were." But I mean, if it's not the name, is there something else they should be doing to assuage fears from folks?
I mean, on a different level, though, we're kind of beyond this, right? In the sense that we have additional cases in the Washington, D.C. area that aren't connected to CPAC. And we're going to see more cases develop in the weeks ahead. So I think in this example, you have an instance where contact tracing could be useful. But in terms of our politics at large, I think we need to start preparing for much larger mitigation.
But should the person come forward, and should other persons who have it come forward so people know if they've been in contact? Is that the responsibility of the individual?
Well, that's a great question. I think that's a different matter entirely. If that person wants to come forward and say, hey, to assuage any concerns, like I was that guy, by all means. And in fact, what we heard today is that he's on the upswing. And we also know that apparently the many employees who work at the place where this happened, the Gaylord Resort, have been apparently tested, according to the American Conservative Union, they said, and they haven't found anybody else pop positive on this.
All right, well, that's good news. And other good news, some randomly good news for the Republican Party. So the Gallup just came out with their latest poll. Let me show it to you, put it up on the screen here. This is what I think is fascinating. For the first time, Republicans are up 40-30 in terms of their approval rating. Now, what makes this fascinating, when I looked at the poll, is it's not just the fact that they're up and down. The last time Republicans were ahead of Democrats was 2005. 2005. So the question I have is, one, is this good for them going into the election? I mean, obviously, you'd rather be up than down, but does this portend really well? Or is this just a function of kind of being in the minority in the House?
Well, they weren't in the minority the last time in 2000. And
Right.
I think it's good news in the sense that it's another example of impeachment backlash.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not only did impeachment benefit the president's approval rating, it clearly seems to have improved the approval rating of Republicans in Congress. That can only be a good thing in the months ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing Republicans need to be on guard for is this is more of a commentary on the opposition party than it is on them.
Right.
The Democrats are getting such low marks that Republicans are doing better in polling.
But it's not. Look, I think if it was like 30 to 27 or something where they were both low, but Republicans at 40%. And I agree with you. That's the thing that's interesting, because when you're in the minority, you're not doing anything. Yeah. You're just the opposition, right? And especially in the House of Representatives, where you have literally no power. So the the other guys are doing so bad that we need them. We'd rather have you guys.
Yeah, I also think it's kind of a commentary on party unity. Republicans have rarely ever been this unified in the House of Representatives. And with Kevin McCarthy in charge in the leadership and the Freedom Caucus very much working with leadership in each step of this process, as you watch the impeachment go along, you didn't really see fault lines in the Republican Party. They stood in unified defiance of what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats were pursuing. And I think for that reason, they look strong, whereas Democrats looked weak and out of control.
Well, one of the people who wasn't as unified, and who this poll speaks about, who I think is very interesting, is Mitt Romney. The poll actually came out and said that Dems actually favor Mitt Romney over Republicans. And this was very interesting. Get this, 56-23.
He's loved.
That's a pretty staggering stat. Is this a good thing for Mitt Romney? Does he want this? Is this what happens when you decide to try to, play middle of the fence here?
Well, it's probably not good for him in terms of the internal politics in Utah. Of course, he has another 4 years left in his term, so there's plenty of time for him to recover. But it proves one thing about Washington. If you want to be loved, go after Donald Trump. That's all it takes in this town now.
Yeah, and there's been far too much of that in D.C., which is like just constantly sucking up to the establishment and hoping to outrun the caricature that they've developed of you. The reality is, like, Mitt Romney was treated like garbage, like, for many years by the very same establishment he now sucks up to. And I think voters are really tired of that. They view that as weakness, and they want to see people fight back. And I think that's what you see in President Trump. And what he's done is created a permission structure where, like, all of a sudden, all these Republicans, Lindsey Graham, where did that guy come from? All of a sudden, he's fighting back because he realized, oh, wait, the voters want me to do that, and he sees it in Trump.
I love the point that you're making, because the press makes it seem as though everyone is just sucking up to Trump. Do you think this is a genuine, hey, I believe in the agenda, or is it I'm covering my own hide because I don't want a primary?
Well, I think they believe in the agenda, and also to what Vince was saying is Trump has proven that you can criticize the media.
Right.
You can play by the Democrats' rules, and you can succeed within your own party. I mean, I think a lot of conservatives and Republicans have felt that the rules have been rigged against them for a long time, and President Trump showed, well, look, if you play by their rules, it's going to be dirty, it's going to be confrontational, but you're going to win.
But we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking that every Republican is a subscriber to the Trump doctrine. They're not. There's a lot of people who are just, as you kind of pointed out, trying to keep their head above water and just doing what they can to stay a part of this. I think there's plenty. I mean, look, the leaders of the House and the Senate, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, these guys are political power brokers.
Right.
They know what they need to do.
Quick, because we're running out of time. Do the Republicans, based on those poll numbers and the way things are blowing out, take back the House of Representatives?
That depends on how they handle coronavirus. And that means that
you think the House Republicans
have to go with the president. I've already seen some headlines that the Republicans on the Hill are going to be resistant to the president's stimulus agenda. That is a huge mistake.
Hold back AOC and the squad. In the end, it could cost her. I think it will.
Wow, that's great. Thank you guys. Matt, Vince, thank you guys for that insight.